Welcome to the HawkCast with your host, AJ Hawk.
All right, Andrea Kremer is with us right now. This is like it's a big deal having such a professional person like yourself, and especially to have another female join us. I had the great Pam Oliver on here maybe a year ago, and Pam shared some great insight. And I think with everything going on in the media, it's great to have you, Andrea. I know right now you're the Chief Correspondent for NFL Network.
One of my jobs, yes.
Yes. That's a thing that's hard to like nail down. When someone comes and asks you, Andrea, what do you do? How do you answer that?
Well, it's interesting. It's not so much what people ask me, it's what I get recognized for, if you will. You know what I mean? Airports are a big thing when you're but usually it's for Real Sports, actually. HBO Real Sports. So it's interesting. I was at ESPN for 17 years. When you're at ESPN, you don't work for anybody else. And then when I left ESPN to join Sunday Night Football, I did Sunday Night Football, I did the Olympics, and then that's when I added Real Sports on HBO, a show that I'd always loved and you know, really admired. This is not a shameless plug, but I've just always felt that it's the best journalism, not even sports journalism, but journalism on television. And then I added and then when I left NBC, I added the NFL Network, and then I added the show on CBS that I do. And then I also, because how many jobs can one person have, AJ, right? Mm-hmm. I started teaching. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. You
right, but you know what that means?
The art of the interview.
Right, which means that I'm checking out your interviewing because I may have to bring you into my class at one point.
Oh, trust me. When I was looking a lot of stuff up on you, it started to make me nervous. I was like, oh, goodness. And I know you're considered like the greatest interviewer ever almost.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, but I mean, you've had some distinguished colleagues say that about yourself. So it made me nervous thinking, oh, man, she's going to be just critiquing me in her head thinking, oh, what's this guy doing?
Well, here's the weirdest thing that's ever happened regarding that. It was actually last year, the opening week of the football season. And I was flying in. I'd actually, believe it or not, here's an interesting segue, been in your hometown profiling Urban Meyer for Real Sports. And I was flying in from Columbus to LA. And I get in really late because we'd done some, there's not a lot of nonstops from Columbus, as you well know. So I think I went through Atlanta. So I get to LA really late at night because I'm in the studio for the NFL Network the next day. And I come down to baggage claim and all. And I see some guy walking towards me holding a camera, like down around, holding it down, sort of down by his hip. So I'm ignoring him. I'm looking for the guy who's going to drive me. And the guy walks over to me and he says, Andrea Kremer. And I kind of look at him skeptically and I realize what's going on. And he says, so-and-so from TMZ. So I go, oh, man, must be a really slow night if you're looking for me. And I go, there's no way you're looking. He goes, oh no. And he shows me, which was really creepy, his iPhone and had my name, my flight number, everything on it. It was really, really creepy. So this is like the Ray Rice stuff, this is all around then. So he goes, well, can I ask you a few questions? So I said, well, you got to tell me what the questions are. And I also know, because this has happened to me before, that they're rolling the whole time. Yeah. So you don't want to say anything really stupid at all. So to make a long story short, the guy, I said, listen, I'm not talking to you if you don't tell me what you're going to ask me. So the guy goes, so I just want you to know that I know you teach a class in interviewing and I'm really nervous. So please don't make me any more nervous. And I just start laughing. I mean, the guy looks like he's about 20 years old and he's like, just help me out. I'm just starting on the business. Of course, I think he's full of what. Yeah. But whatever. So I answered his questions in a very benign way. And then he starts, and what's it like being a woman in the locker room? And like, who have you ever seen? And this, and then I go, I said, if you weren't taking my class, you just failed. And the guy's like running after me, here, take my business card. It was so bizarre. So that's a long way of saying that, I've had people indicate that to me about interviewing before.
Oh, I'm sure. And so how many years now have you been in the, I guess, the sports world?
Oh man, are you gonna ruin my day?
What? I think
Probably long before you were born. I mean, a long time. I've been in sports a long time.
I'm pretty old, Andrea. I don't think so. I think it's a sign of respect that you could do it this long, especially, I think, tell me your thoughts. Being a female, do you feel like you guys get phased out earlier than men do?
Well, first of all, you mentioned something that's actually really important to me, which is the longevity. Because, and I always joke about this, and this isn't like, oh, I failed the test and I got an A. This is truly how I think. If you're hired for your looks as a woman, sooner or later they're going to go away. Mm-hmm. And if that's all you have to rely on, you're in trouble. I don't think of any job I've ever been hired, I've been hired for my looks. And I think that I'm okay. I'm fine. Television is a visual medium. You have to look okay. But I don't think anybody would ever confuse that with why I was hired. So the fact that I have been able to do this after 30 plus years, something I'm really proud of. You mentioned Pam Oliver. She's one of my best friends, and she and I talk about this all the time. We're really proud of our longevity. And I feel that the experience is just, there's nothing that can ever make up for it at all. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm proud that, at my age and with my level of experience, that I am still in demand as I am. And, probably, I mean, you know how it is. In some ways, it's not a lot different from a professional athlete. I mean, either your career ends because it just ends, you're cut, or you can't get another job, or you have an injury, or else you just know you can't do it at that level anymore. And if I ever felt that I wasn't enthused and I wasn't excited about what I was doing, I'd get out, because I never, ever, ever want to be one of those people that hangs on too long.
Now, going back to the whole getting hired for your looks thing, it made me think of not anyone specific, I guess, but do you feel like there's any female, it's not even sports, let's say all mediums in the media that have been hired basically for their looks, but then they morphed into becoming a great broadcaster?
Wow.
Does that happen? I really do wonder that.
Well, look, I'm not saying that if you're really good looking, you can't be a good broadcaster.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this is what I've always said exists, in my opinion, AJ, for women in sports. There's people who grew up loving sports, maybe just the way you did, as from a little kid, and then they grow up and, oh, by the way, I get to broadcast it, report on it, write about it. And then there's women who, I want to be on television. I want to be on television. Well, like, sports looks like it'll be a really cool thing. And I've always believed that the audience can tell the difference. I mean, I was a football geek from about as young as I could be. And I've loved sports my whole life. And of course, the irony is that when I was growing up, and I've said this to young people, and they kind of look at me with like really big eyes, and I know about big eyes. And I've said, when I was growing up, when I was your age, I didn't exist. And they look at me and they kind of don't figure. I go, when I was your age, there's nobody that I could look up to and say, wow, I really want to do what she does, because there wasn't anybody doing it, which is a really, really bizarre thing. So it never occurred to me until I was, well out of college. I mean, well out of college, that this is something that I could make a living doing.
That's a great point you brought up, that there was no one that you could look to that had the gig that you have now.
No.
If you look at the landscape now, there's females broadcasting all over doing great work. Like you said, Pam Oliver has been doing it for a long time as well. And so you were hired by ESPN in '89. I know that's a big deal. You were like the first female correspondent, correct?
Right. For ESPN, yes.
How was that? How was that when you when you got that gig? Could you feel how big of a deal that was?
Well, before I was at ESPN, I was a producer at NFL Films. And I was the first female producer ever hired at NFL Films. So I'd kind of been the first and the only one before. And I'll never forget, when I was hired at NFL Films, the guy who hired me, we're sitting in his office, and it was just kind of come in and, do your human resources thing, and, just the laying the groundwork. And I was starting work the next week. And of course I was dressed like in a suit and all this sort of stuff. And so he says, first of all, when you come into work, you got to dress down, because nobody dresses that formally. He goes, but secondly, I just want you to know that there's some people on what we called at that point editor's row, because you were a writer, editor, producer, director. You did everything. It was an amazing first job. And he goes, there's some people in editor's row who think that it's long overdue that we've hired a woman. But there's also a few people on editor's row who don't think that a woman belongs doing this. And I'm like, well, gee, thanks a lot for that cheery endorsement. I can't wait to come to work next week. And let's just put it this way. It did not take me long to figure out who did not think I belonged. And and I had a really interesting thing happen to me not long after I was hired at NFL Films. The first thing that I was doing, I was producing segments for Inside the NFL. And what we did at that time was, during the week, we'd have not just the 4 producers that were producing segments, but all the producers at Films, we'd all sit and we'd screen the video, because number one, it was a great opportunity for everybody to see all the shots from the week, but it was also a great opportunity for everybody to fact check each other. And you just sort of like laying there really relaxed and just sort of hanging out. And we're watching one week, and something comes on, and I hear it, and I know it's a mistake. I know there's a mistake. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but you start overthinking it, and then you sort of start doubting yourself. And all of a sudden, I realize, well, look, what do I want to do? If I speak up and I'm right, then that's good, because, you never want to be wrong. Mm-hmm. And it makes the company look bad, the product look bad. And but if I'm wrong, I'm embarrassing myself. And I found out that the segment that the mistake was in was produced by the guy who didn't think I belonged. Yeah. So I decide, you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb. I really feel that I'm right. And I very quietly said something, I think it was to Steve Sable, my mentor at NFL Films, who ran NFL Films. And I was right. And he's like, oh, great catch, great catch. I'm really glad that, because they could re-voice it. Yeah. So later in the day, the producer came up to me and he says, sort of begrudgingly, thanks a lot for catching that, made us all look good. And it's not like he and I ever went to lunch after that, but he treated me differently. And you know what? It's cool. I proved myself to him. I proved myself by my actions. That resonated for me always, because what I realized is there's nothing that I can say that's going to make people comfortable with me. It's going to be my work. It's going to be my actions. It's going to be what I do. And so every job that I've ever been hired in subsequently, ESPN, where I was the first woman and I was starting something new, that's how I approached it. Put the blinders on and don't worry about what I can't control, which is what other people think. Just worry about doing the best job that I can do.
I mean, that's a great life lesson, I think. Not just that's how everyone should probably approach everything. It's about your work. And that's like a thing that's going on now, I feel like, with this just as society and culture and social media takes off, to where people like to talk about what they're doing way more than they like to actually do it. Mm-hmm. And it's that, I don't know, have you noticed that from when you got in till now, where it's like the whole, I don't know, man, it's one of the things that bugs me. Obviously, I talk about it on here a lot with different guests, that people just want to post pictures and videos of them and their workouts and talk about how hard they're working. I'm like, I just feel no reason to ever tell anybody how hard I'm working. Just show me the results. That's all I care about. And
how old are you? Are you 32?
32, yes.
30. Yay! See, that makes me feel good that you're 32 and I'm a lot older than you, and we feel the same way.
Good. Oh, your mic cut out again. I'm sorry.
I don't know what's
going
on.
Something or not.
I'm not touching anything. I'm not doing anything.
It's all right. It just goes out for a second. It came back.
Okay.
We're good.
my attitude towards social media is, I guess that it's a necessary evil. I know you never say never. I don't post pictures of my family. I don't post pictures of, hey, I'm about to have some really yummy lunch here. I don't care. I don't care. If you care what I'm having for lunch, that's your problem. I don't even want to know. I don't post anything. Truthfully, I know that we should be more active in social media, but I mean, you'll send me a link or you'll send me something to say, and I'll be very proud to post, hey, was on HawkCast today with AJ Hawk, love talking, whatever it is. I will post things about what I'm doing work-wise, but that is it. And the very few times that I have been moved to write something, certainly if somebody passes away, a colleague, and we've had too many, especially from the ESPN days, who have passed away, and I would, put my condolences out there because I think that's important to share. But in any of the few times that I've actually voiced an opinion on something, the vitriol that comes back, and here's the thing, AJ, it's not just I disagree with you. It's, can I use profanity?
Of course.
You're a fucking asshole. Excuse my French. Yeah. Sorry, children, no, if anybody's listening. No, but I mean, that's what it's like. Like, why is there such anger and it's so mean? It doesn't have to be that way. And I understand that it can serve. Look, as a news source, there's been times that I'll check my Twitter feed, which I don't do as consistently as I should, and I'll see news that comes out, and I think that's a really interesting use of Twitter. But all the personal stuff, I'm sorry, I think it's bizarre, and I don't care. And I swear, somebody, I truly, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I followed somebody that would write this, but I actually saw once on Twitter somebody goes, "I'm going to go take a crap," and I was like, This is just got to be a bad joke. Is this what the world's coming to? We have to overshare everything? I don't know, man. Maybe I'm a dinosaur. That's all I can say.
Well, no, I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. It's a weird thing because I'm kind of in between the eras of the whole social media becoming gigantic. Because anyone younger than me that's how they communicate. Like, they don't even really text each other. They Snapchat back and forth. They do all this stuff that's public. It's weird. Right. I know because I have some buddies that aren't married, and they have, every once in a while, they'll be going out with a girl that's like 23 or 24, and they tell me, they're like, bro, I don't even know. I can't even understand how these girls are. Like, he says how that's just what they do. It's what they grew up doing.
Right, but I'm a parent of a teenager. I get it.
Yeah.
But when they get on these group chats, it's mind-numbing. Even my son will say that. I said, seriously, you need to tell me how you're following this. And he's like, you know what? When they start the group, you have 3 kids. How old are your kids?
5, 3, and 8 months.
Okay. Just you wait.
I know. I
can't even imagine what it's going to be like when your kids are a little bit older. But, look, at some point in our lives, our parents always gave us, the scared straight talk or something like that. But let me tell you something. It is not exaggerating. You have to just tell your kids over and over again, what you post, you may think it's going to go away. Do not count on that. It is out there. It's in the ether. It's there for perpetuity. It can be used by a college, by an employer, by anybody. It can be misrepresented. It can be twisted. And the other thing I tell my son is, if you're in a group chat and something is going on and you're not comfortable with that, get out of the chat. There's just, it's amazing all the things that you think about that we didn't have to deal with as kids growing up, and you really need to be cognizant of it these days.
Yeah. How old is your son?
16.
Ooh, so he's right in the heart of it. So how does he? And
he still loves me, so that's so he gets free room and board, as I tell him. So
hey, boys love their mom. My oldest is a girl, and then I have 2 boys. And
right. Oh, I got to ask you a question. Okay. Yeah. Number 1. When you've got kids named Lennon and Hendrix, what's the 3rd child's name?
Vedder.
Ah, there you go.
After Eddie Vedder, yeah.
Right. No, I know what they're so what's the musical background? And did Laura, your wife, agree wholeheartedly to all these names?
Oh yeah, she definitely was on board. The background honestly was my daughter was born and we knew we liked the name Hendrix, but we obviously had a girl first, and so we were like, maybe we could come up with a musical theme for her, and we thought of Lennon and we liked it a lot, so boom, we went with it. And then we had a son next and we knew we were going to go with Hendrix. And then the third one, that was the question. We actually were surprised. We didn't know if we were having a boy or a girl until he came out. And Vedder was kind of the name we had picked out as a boy, and actually we didn't really have a girl name, so I think my wife kind of had a feeling that it was going to be a boy.
And do you call them Lennon, Hendrix, and Vedder, or do they have little nicknames with each?
No, we pretty much do call them their names, really. I mean, like my daughter call her Lenny, Len sometimes. My son goes by Nighthawk because his middle name is Knight, Knight. So a lot of times he'll call himself Nighthawk. And then we call the little guy Vedder. But I'm sure it'll all get shortened and have little play names for him.
And how are you going to let them know about their namesakes?
Ooh, they already do. See, that's the thing. That was one thing I wanted to.
Isn't that great with satellite radio, though?
Yeah. You have to, and you got to. Like my kids love Johnny Cash too, so I basically forced it on them early, and they grew to love it. So it was one of the things. But we have like paintings in my son's room, Hendrix's room. We have paintings of. We had a local guy here of Eddie Vedder, Jimi Hendrix, and John Lennon. And so, I still, my son can point at him and tell you who's who. And so I just try to, keep them aware of it because I don't want those guys to die. I don't want that memory of those people to die because that generation of my kids, are you kidding me? It's going to just dwindle and dwindle over time.
And did you have any hesitation about naming your kids after musical icons who had died?
We thought about that for a second. Yes, we definitely did, especially with a lot of drug culture going on back then too. We did. We're like, are we setting these kids up for failure? I don't know. Right. But yeah, we thought about it. Then I was like, nah, hey, they got plenty of other things like we've been talking about that they're going to have to deal with, not just their names. So.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Good for you.
Well, thank you. So it's going to your son though, because this is a question as a father that I like. How do you teach your kid to make good decisions when he is on his own?
When he's on his own, you mean just generally, or? Yeah,
well, generally, but more so. He's at some point he's going to go off to college. He's going to go be by himself. He's going to live on his own. But also, now even in high school, if he's 16, I assume he might be getting a driver's license. Like, how do you? It's one of the things I'm trying to figure out. How do I instill that into my kids to make good decisions when they're away from me as their dad? Because there's going to be times when they're inundated with all this stuff at a young age. Like, it's the whole joke about little boys or teenage kids would be sneaking to go find a Playboy in the woods someday, and now they're going to have it on their phone, the most gruesome stuff you could ever have when they're 6 years old.
Or the porn thing is what actually really worries me more than anything.
That's what I'm wondering. Does this mess these young brains up seeing all this at such a young age?
Well, look, I appreciate you asking me that question, and I never, ever, ever want to put myself in a position where I'm like some parental expert. You know what I mean? That kind of worries me. I only can talk about the experience that we're having and that we're in it right now. And, the best thing that we've always done, I mean, I travel for my job. Okay. And there's times when my husband does travel. And I've always had one wonderful babysitter, never a succession, one wonderful person who I feel is part of our family. But my husband or one of us has always been around. I don't want somebody else raising my kids. Yeah. And that's number one. Pay attention. Just paying attention. I mean, it sounds like, oh yeah, duh, but you'd be surprised. You know what I mean? We really, really try to pay attention and understand that he's his own person. He's not my husband. He's not me. The mirror is not always held up. So we really try to understand who he is, what makes him tick, the things that are of interest to him. And we've always told him a lot of stories. So instead of coming off like some pontificating adult, we'll tell him how we dealt with things, but in a very sort of organic way, just stories about things that we dealt with growing up, or exposure to drugs, or things of how we dealt with it, things of that nature. I've never been a follower. I've always been someone who just has not succumbed to peer pressure. But instead of just saying that, I'll give him an example of something that I dealt with. So we talk a lot about that, and I feel really, really lucky that my son talks to us. Mm-hmm. And I will share one thing with you, God. I kind of hope that he doesn't find this podcast, or actually not him, that his friends don't find this podcast, because they'll just bust his balls relentlessly. But we had a situation where I won't get into the specifics of it, but we were having a more personal discussion, if you can kind of get my drift. Mm-hmm. And he sort of starts with the looking away and the mom, and I didn't overstep my bounds or anything, but I was just speaking very plainly to him. And he looks at me and he goes, "Mom, you've been in too many locker rooms." And I go, without skipping a beat, I go, "You know what? You are 100% right. There's nothing I don't know. There's nothing I haven't seen. There's nothing you can't talk to me about. And trust me on one thing, you can ask your friends or you can ask me. And I promise you, I'll never lie to you. I'll never bullshit you. I'll tell you the truth. And I may, pretty good chance, know something more than your friends." And so, we've just always spoken pretty plainly to him. I never did the baby talk thing. I talked to him like he's a person. So again, I never want to be in a position where it looks like I'm giving advice, but I just know that that's been our experience, and so far so good.
What was your situation like growing up as a kid? Did you have support like that from your parents?
Oh yeah, my parents were phenomenal. I mean, I was cute little blonde Andy, and I loved football. I loved sports. One of the funniest stories is I was probably, I don't know, maybe 12 years old, maybe 13, in and around there. And on Mondays, I was coming home with money. Kind of looking at me a little funny. But finally, after a couple of weeks, she goes, "You got to tell me where you're getting this money from." And I was winning the football poll at school. And I was beating all the boys. So my father is, an attorney, is immediately like, "Well, you need to do my football poll for work." And I look at my mother, and I just remember saying to her later in life, I go, "Ma, did you think I was turning tricks? I mean, what do you think I got the money from? I mean, come on now." So, but I remember they bought me football books. There's a book called The Pro Style. I still have it in my library somewhere. They always supported that I was really into sports. We got season tickets to the Philadelphia Eagles. I grew up in Philadelphia, from when Veterans Stadium opened. We went to the game every Sunday. They really supported that I love sports. And to me, that's the greatest gift any parent can ever give a kid, is when you see that your child is interested in something, to support them on that is just the greatest thing. I mean, I always say some little girls had Barbie. I had Larry Zonka. I love Larry Zonka. And that's, that started me on my path to loving sports, and my parents supported that.
Larry Zonka. See, I know Larry Zonka from when he hosted the original Gladiators.
Yes. Well, I was a huge Miami Dolphins fan growing up. 1971, when they lost to the Cowboys 24-3 in the Super Bowl, I cried. And then, the next 2 years when they went undefeated, I was very happy. When they finally lost their first game the next season after the undefeated season, they lost to the Oakland Raiders. And the undefeated season, when Bob Greasy broke his leg, I sent a letter to the team, to Don Shula, and I got back an autographed team picture. Yeah, I proudly posted it on my wall. Then the next year when they lost, I sent another, and I got a picture of Shula back. So talk about your life coming full circle. It's 1985. And I'm with ESPN. Excuse me, I'm still with them. I'm a producer at NFL Films. And I go down to Miami to interview the Dolphins before the Super Bowl. And, I got to meet with them. And a couple years later, when I was at ESPN and I got to work with Shula again and I could, tell him the story, I brought the picture with me just to see if it was really his autograph. And it was.
Wow.
So, and I also showed him this picture, and it was like, one of those pictures from the 70s with like the bad suit, the bad shirt,
Oh, yeah.
And I said, so this is like blackmail, man. Here, you give me a good interview or else we got this picture. It was very funny, but it was interesting to grow up as a fan of someone or something, and then to actually be in that position with them as a professional. And never letting that on, you know what I mean? Because you want to be very, very, very professional about things. But yeah, that was. I had a few of those situations. The first time I met Larry Zonko comes to mind in that way.
Wow. Now it got me thinking about when you were mentioning like the record and everything. Bob Greasy breaking his leg, and how knowledgeable you are about football. Like, is your husband into football as much as you?
My husband played Division III football.
Mm-hmm.
Played a lot of the teams actually in your area or back in the Green Bay area because he went to the University of Chicago. So he played Rover back at the University of Chicago. And he always jokes that he loved sports until he met me, until it became his life. So now we say he's a civilian. Mm. So he kind of puts up with sports. There's this great, somebody gave me like a little pillow that's sort of embroidered, and it says on it, we interrupt this marriage to bring you the football season. And of course, we joke that has different meaning in our household. So he likes it. My son doesn't really care for, he's more of an outdoor sports kid.
Okay.
He's, he plays lacrosse, but, he's biking, hiking, phenomenal skier. That's what his thing is. And we had a conversation one day, and I said to him, because I always thought this, he was either going to really love football because mom did it, or he was going to really not like it because it took me away. And I asked him about that one time, and he said, yeah, I probably thought that, it took you away from me, and I didn't want to deal with that. So that's kind of what I expected, but that's all right.
Yeah, I think it's as you get older too, you start to look at your parents differently than you do when you were young. Especially then, once you have your own kids, you look back and you understand and you respect more of like what your parents did and how they did support you. I'm like yourself. I had my parents set an awesome example for myself, and my two other older brothers, and showed us exactly the way and what a great marriage was and how to treat people. So I didn't, at the time, you're just living it and you're thinking, oh man, they won't let me go to this middle school dance. What's happening? I can't stand this. And then you get older and you're like, oh man, they did like everything they possibly could to help me.
Yeah, it's hard for me. Both of my parents are passed away, which is just one of the great sadnesses of my life. And so I don't get a chance to say, well, we're applying to college in a couple of years, and it's sort of like, well, how did we deal with it? When we had to apply, I don't get to ask them those questions, and that's really hard. And luckily, my in-laws are phenomenal people, and I really view them as my parents. So I'm really lucky in that vein. But yeah, there's so many times that you do want to look to your parents and keep that relationship cultivated. I mean, it's funny for me because my son's friends, kind of all know who I am. And the girls, for the girls, which actually makes me really proud, in particular, they think it's such a cool job. And I'm never, I never talk about anything. I don't, you should feel honored that I'm sitting in my office right now with makeup on, because when I'm at home, no makeup. I live in my Lululemons, and that's about the extent of it. So, when I'll never forget. Yeah, actually, you'll get a kick out of this. It was the age when we were having the stranger discussion. Don't talk to strangers. All that sort of stuff. And my son and my son's probably, I don't know, 6 or 7, and we're on a plane. And the guy next to me starts talking to me. And my son you know. So it's one of those where, you know how kids like they whisper, they think they're whispering, but they're talking like this.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, recognizes me from television, so he doesn't really think I'm a stranger. And I had to, that was kind of a weird thing. I had to clarify that because I didn't want to be a hypocrite. I'm talking to strangers, but I had to let him understand that this guy felt that he knew me from watching me on TV.
I can imagine you have many situations like that. Now, if you go to let's say you go to a dinner party, what's some of the weirdest questions you get asked?
Yeah, well, some of the things are the very predictable. Who's the best person you ever interviewed? Mm-hmm. Who's the hardest person you've ever interviewed? Do you know so-and-so? You know, what are they like? You know, that type of thing. And, you know, most of my friends kind of know better than that. You know what I mean? You sort of don't want to be talking shop or anything at that point. But, you know, you always be nice to people. I mean, you would never, you know, you just talk about it. But usually it's those kinds of questions. Who's the easiest person? Who's the hardest person to interview? What's the best event you ever were at? You know, that sort of thing. Those things sort of seem a little bit routine.
Oh, I could see like my I can't imagine like my mom, the questions she would ask you. Well, she would probably ask you like, have you ever talked to Oprah? What about Dr. Phil? She would ask you about people like that, probably. Actually, not as much the sports stuff.
She doesn't like sports so much?
No, she loves sports, but she loves people like you and Pam, and she did like a sit down for like a Thanksgiving special type interview they did for one of the games when we were playing Detroit back in like 08, 09 maybe.
Right.
And she was like, she was so nervous you'd have thought like, I don't know. You'd have thought she was about to get executed in an hour.
Oh.
Like how nervous my mom was to just sit down. It wasn't live, just to have a taped conversation with Pam, and because she loves her and just not used to sitting there on camera. So once like every answer to sound perfect, I was like, Mom, they'll cut it up, they'll edit it, you'll be fine. Trust me, just speak to her.
Right.
So she'd be really nervous around you. I think both my dad would as well. They both love sports.
Wow.
Yeah, but
well, how about Laura? I mean, being married to it and having grown up in it. How does your wife feel about football?
She loves the sport and she loves everything about it. She loves college football especially. She lived at Notre Dame for like a summer with her brother, so she's really into the Notre Dame thing, like the atmosphere, the tradition, the history. She loves the pageantry of college football, but she loves the NFL as well. She's not sitting there like on her own ever watching games. I don't walk in the room and catch her watching Jags Panthers or something. That doesn't.
Do you watch?
Yeah, I watch. I'm not like a crazy consumer, but I say I watch a good amount, especially now because I want to go. I'd like to call games eventually. I'd like to be in the booth, college or pro. So I definitely watch. I think I almost am more. As I got older, I started watching more. I didn't watch a whole lot when I was first in the NFL. I always watched college. I love watching college football. Like college football, like the first college football Saturday. I don't know if you watched any of those games this season, 2016. Mm-hmm. It was a crazy Saturday. It was a great way to start the whole college season. That's for sure.
So, have you ever done any play-by-play?
I've only done like a mock play-by or mock. And it was not play-by-play at like the broadcast boot camp.
Or mock analysis. Yeah. You have done it.
Yep, and I'm doing some more coming up here shortly.
Oh, cool. What are you doing?
Just doing some for Brady. My brother-in-law works for Fox, and he does a lot of the Pac-12 games. I'm actually going to go out there and do like a screen test type, do like the game, but not for the air, but for camera that they're going to check out and critique me, I'm sure.
Right. So when you watch the games like this weekend, do you turn down the volume and try to do the analysis like that?
I don't turn it down, but I do. I definitely try to listen to the guys that I think are really good and I respect, and I try to even take notes on what little things that they might have here and there that the casual people maybe take for granted. That, like, obviously everyone knows that Collinsworth is great. I think Aikman, I think Troy and Joe are great, and so I'll watch those guys and just try to see what it is they do, how they make it feel so organic and so comfortable when I know it's not. I know up there when you have producers in your ear and a talkback button, you have everything happening, you have to find a way to make it sound pretty relaxed and pretty realistic. So I think those guys do a great job. When
you watch a game, can you see exactly can you see the whole field? Can you see enough to be able to analyze it that succinctly and that quickly?
I think so. In my head, I can, but the thing is, I need the reps to actually do it.
That's why I say you should be turning down the volume and you should be saying it.
Well, yeah. I'm going to do it then this weekend. I'm going to do it. I'll do it for the college games on Saturday, and then for the pro games I watch on Sunday. I'm going to do it. You challenged me. I think that's a good thing.
Well, so one of the most fun profiles that I've done for Real Sports was of Doc Emmerich, Doc Emmerich.
The best. I'd say he's the best play-by-play guy on the planet.
There you go. I will let him know you said that.
Please.
You should have him on should have him on the HawkCast.
Hey, can I honestly? I'm gonna ask you for his contact info after this. I love that guy.
Yeah, he is, and he, as amazing as he is as a broadcaster. This sounds cliche because you hear people say even better as a person, like unbelievable guy. So when he was starting out, and maybe you'll get to ask him this yourself when you have him on your show, but he was teaching actually graduate school. Mm-hmm. And he would go to the college hockey games, and he would sit at the very top of the stadium with a recorder, and he would just do the recording into the recorder. And I remember asking him one time, why not sort of just do it in your head? And he goes, no, you need to hear your voice, and you need to have the mechanics of literally it coming out of your mouth and understanding how you have to speak. And they have to speak quickly and succinctly, but you have to speak clearly. So the actual, and then of course you go back and listen to yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think, and as an athlete, think of all the self-scouting you ever did, right? Mm-hmm. As much film as you've ever watched of the opponent, how much did you ever watch of yourself? So that's what really made sense to me about what Doc was talking about. So that's why I take a page of that, and that's why I even say it to you.
That's perfect. I remember I saw the piece that you did on him. I was so excited because Doc, I've known him his voice for a long time, and I watch hockey. I watch a good amount of hockey now, I'd say, but I'll try to find whatever game he's doing, and I'm just like in awe of him. One of my brothers will text each other back and forth when we find one of Doc's games, and we just can't. You can't even people really take that for granted how great he is at his job. Yeah, I mean the fluidity of the language and his facility with it is just incredible. I mean it's really incredible what he's able to do. And look, hockey is a totally different sport. I mean I think that at one point he spoke straight for like a minute and 8 seconds, something incredible like that, which, may not seem like a lot, but if you think about it, with all the action that's going on and using the different verbs and not repeating himself, it's an art, and he truly is the maestro. Oh, he's a true artist, and I love when you went back to his house, I believe, with his wife. And he has like all these little dogs running around his yard. You remember that? Right. I had him do the play-by-play of the dogs. That was hilarious. Yeah, he could do anything. You could tell, like, this is just a great guy all around. Yeah. No, anybody who loves animals like that is pretty high in my book anyway. So. Okay, good. I'll definitely reach out to you and I'm going to, hopefully he has the email. I'm going to send him an email and try to get him on here. All right. So I was watching your interview, your piece you did on Kobe. And you were sitting face to face with Kobe, which I would imagine would be, for myself, not you, would be pretty intimidating. Like Kobe he's known to be he's a powerful guy and he's very competitive and fiery. And you read off all of these the ways like his teammates described him, mm-hmm. and he just laughed and agreed with you. Like how do you ask those kind of questions, or how do you present that to a guy like Kobe? Do you ever have any anxiety about that going in? No, because you go in prepared. To me, preparation is like when you were playing and it's your pads. It's whatever little bit of armor, if you will, that you can have. And the other thing is the way that you present it. I mean, if you present it in a really snarky kind of asshole manner, accusatory, then it's not going to be good. If you just, hey, do you know what people have said about you? And then you read it off, and
if he was going to deny it, I think it would have been a little bit disingenuous. But yeah, it was very interesting because Kobe, it reminded me of the first time I ever interviewed Bobby Knight back in the day. That was probably one of the only times going into an interview I was nervous because I knew. Nobody told me, but I just knew he was going to test me. And I was doing a story on one of the anniversaries of the undefeated 1976 Indiana basketball team. And truthfully, I knew everything that, short of having covered it or played for the team, I felt like I knew everything I could have about that because I knew he was going to test me about it in some capacity at some point, probably early on in the interview. And he did. And I didn't do one of those, but I just responded in the appropriate way. And I knew that he knew that I knew that he knew that I was prepared and that I'd done my homework, that I knew what I was talking about. Because for someone to be around someone like him, credibility is everything. And same thing with someone like Kobe. If they sense a weakness in you as an interviewer, they'll just go in on it right away. And you just have to know that. And over the years, I felt like I had a pretty good relationship with Bobby Knight, and I was really proud of that. But you just have to know that. And I don't know if it's just being a female or if it's just being young at the time or whatever. But I've always been really super cognizant of just having whatever it is that can be buttoned up. Really, one of my bosses at ESPN once told me, once said of me, talking about me interviewing a certain subject, Andrea knows him better than he knows himself. And I always kind of thought about that, and something like that really is important to me, the level of preparation that is required.
That's interesting. Yeah, the prep is what people don't see. Do you ever find, I've found myself having an issue with this. So I've had like over 80 episodes or whatever of different people, and some people I'll watch so many videos on different interviews they've done. I've read everything about them, and it actually, the podcast doesn't go as well because I assume everyone already knows all of this stuff that I've already watched and I've already read. And so either I don't ask them about it or I do a poor job and I like apologize. Like, well, so like in 1989, you're hired. We all know you're hired by ESPN. Tell us about that. Like I would do stuff like that where I felt almost I used the preparation in the wrong way. I didn't get the best out of the person because I wasn't naturally curious.
Well, you just said the absolute key thing to me, probably the single most important thing about interviewing, which is to be naturally curious, because you are not interviewing for you. You're interviewing for the audience, for the listeners, for the people who are watching. And you need to sit there and say, what do they want to know? And you can't assume that people know things. I mean, I deal with this for our real sports stories all the time. By the time you get into an interview with somebody, you feel like you know so much, you've heard so much, and it's almost like I've actually joked with this about people. There's an ego part that's involved that says, I want to hear him or her say something that I've never read or heard before. Yep. And that's great. But the reality is that some of that great stuff that you've read, people haven't heard either. Even with the internet and how prolific things are out there, not everybody knows everything. And so if there's a key point, I always feel, and I'll even say this to producer, don't let me overlook the obvious. There's something that I think is really important. Don't let me overlook that. But the other thing that I happen to, me personally, I don't care for necessarily as an interviewer is if you were going to, not you personally, but if the interviewer says, well, back in such and such and such and such, you did this and this and this and this and da 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 da. Okay, well, what? You've just told me everything now. So, do you want to ask me something about that, or what is it that you want to know? I mean, yes, you want to sort of set the stage for a certain point in someone's life. But if you're just going to give everything away, then what good is even asking the question? Does that make any sense? Yeah,
very much. I'm always in that fine line of I always like to prep for people, but I think the biggest takeaway I would have from your advice would be never assume that other people know what we're talking about. Or
Yeah, absolutely.
About this person. They want to know, they want to hear the person that you're talking to say it, not me. They don't want to hear me repeat your whole backstory.
Right. And if there is something interesting in the backstory that then it's a little bit of a cliche expression that we use, but we call it a deeper dive. Take the deeper dive in there. I mean, if you have someone, I mean, the thing I think that's nice about this format is that it doesn't feel as oppressive as you've got all the lights beating down on you. Hey, I'm just sitting in my office talking with AJ, that type of thing. And so it's sort of a conducive atmosphere to letting people just talk. And also you don't have 30 seconds. You have to be very brief. So it's a nice atmosphere that's conducive to that. So sit there and say, okay, if I know that about this person, what else don't I know? And you get them talking about stories and that, to me, when you get people telling stories about themselves or other people, whatever, that's the most revelatory thing. That's when you really learn about people, in my opinion. And that's also what's the most memorable. But the recitation of what somebody's done, go on Wikipedia or whatever. Not you personally, but anybody can find that out. But take me beyond that. I want to know more about what makes the person tick.
Speaking about interviews, can you think off the top of your head of any interview you have done that's kind of gotten away from you to where it went in a direction you weren't planning on going?
Oh my God. Well, I've got one that's probably one of the single most impactful interviews of my career. And I was with ESPN and we're going into the Vikings. And the thing is you at that point you went in. That was a day and age when we did a lot more features. Went in and we're going to do something on Chris Carter. And, I know Chris. I'd worked with him over the years, many times. I felt we had a good, good relationship. I felt that he respected me. I certainly respected him. It's when Warren Moon was there. It's really really the height of his career. And so I knew a lot about him and, of course, do the over preparation type of thing. And I think we went in and we didn't have necessarily a specific storyline we were going for. If nothing else, it could just be just a great interview, hopefully a strong interview. So go in, we're at the facility, nice sort of quiet, calm atmosphere. And he and I have since talked about this. Like, did you wake up and decide this that morning? But this was going to be the day that he decided that he was going to talk publicly for the first time ever about his drug and alcohol addiction.
Wow.
And so I can't tell you that I remember the questions that I asked that sort of elicited this, but that's where he went. So you talk about an interview going someplace you didn't think, because I don't know if you remember, but even dating back to the days in Philadelphia, even dating back to the days at Ohio State, there have been a lot of rumors. Why did Buddy cut him from Philadelphia? Buddy Ryan cut him from Philadelphia, this and that. But nobody ever knew. And I always think that until you actually hear it from the person, it's a very dangerous place to go. You should never speculate or put rumors out there. Mm-hmm. And he he really talked about it. He talked about the factors that led him to it. He talked about how bad it got. He talked about the therapy. And I remember sitting there thinking, again, this isn't preparation. This is that natural curiosity that's coming out. And I remember thinking, AJ, wow, this is a really big moment. And you've got to respect this moment because this person is, for whatever reason, entrusting you with this. And his life's going to be different after this interview. And when we were all done, I was pretty much blown away. And he had talked about this therapist that he used. And I actually said to him, can I talk to her? And he gave me permission, gave me the number, called her, said, you can talk to Andrea. You can talk with her so I could get some more information about, the treatment that he had used and where he was at this point in his life. So, typically after you're done a shoot, you call back to the home office and, the most important thing, did you get to different? Of course, like they're all crazy that, that we got this material. And the way that it used to work at ESPN was that you would promote on Thursday's Sports Center what was going to air on Sunday. That was for whatever, maybe it's because college football, but that was a big day to have your promos run on Sports Center. Now, not that I didn't trust anybody at ESPN, but I know they're going to take the most sensational thing and put it out there. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is a really important thing. I mean, we really have to respect this. This is a responsibility that we've been given. And I said, I want to write the promo. I want to know what's going to be going on. I want to know how it's going to be used. I want to make sure that it's not going to be sensationalized. And, to ESPN's credit, we had a very good relationship. I think a really respectful relationship. They let me do that. So the promo ran. And then, of course, the piece, garnered a tremendous amount of headlines. And it was a really big deal at that time. So that airs on Sunday. Monday, I'm sitting in my office and the phone rings. And I see that it's Chris's number. And I swear my heart starts beating. Because, look, I mean, I'm doing my job. I'm not doing my job to make you feel good. I'm not doing my job to please you. I'm doing the best job that I can do to be a fair, objective journalist. Mm-hmm. But come on, man. I'm a human being. He's a human being, So I'm nervous. So I answer the phone. And I wasn't sure what to expect. And he thanked me. And I was like, I literally, I swear, I could feel myself welling up with tears. I felt it was that emotional. And he said, Melanie, his wife, he said, Melanie and I talked about this. And, we knew that this was the right time. And after we saw the piece aired, we knew we did it with the right person. Wow. Oh, my God. That was a really important, huge learning experience in my career and a really big deal. And Chris has talked about this interview before. He's talked about it on camera before. And that was, that was a really big deal. Like I said, he trusted me. He entrusted me with something very important. And he felt that I handled it the right way. And that was huge for me. And I have had other situations like that where I have had, I hate to say this because it sounds so sensational, but exclusives where somebody's talking to you for the first time. I mean, Barrett Robbins of the Oakland Raiders. I mean, what he went through, I was the only person that he spoke with for years about this. And I just feel, AJ, that when somebody does that and they show the faith that they have in you, that it's really, you have to take it very seriously. They're entrusting you with something so personal. And you have to really respect that, and you have to handle it the right way.
How do you balance that, but also asking the questions that the public wants to hear?
Well, you ask it. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, there's no doubt. I remember with Barrett Robbins, taking him through the whole thing. It was very painful. Mm-hmm. But at one point, we get to, he'd already been in and out of Betty Ford and all this. And at one point we get to this part of the interview and I look at him and I just say, are you an alcoholic? And I've had training in substance abuse areas where I've learned about this. And I understand that the answer to that question is more important than you think because for recovering addicts or for an addict who is trying to recover, the most important thing is admission. You have to admit that you have to be, vulnerable and you have to admit that you have an addiction.
You have to surrender, right?
That's exactly right. You got to surrender. So if he didn't answer yes, then there's a line of questioning that goes there. Yeah. And he did answer yes. So there's a line of questioning that goes that direction too. But, you always have to ask, see, I've always been of a different belief. I don't believe in the tough questions type. I hear, oh, she asks tough. What's a tough question? Is a tough question something that somebody doesn't want to answer? I always say this. This is what I tell my students. And this is what I tell people that I work with. I have to ask. You don't have to answer.
Okay.
Because every place that I work, we have rules. We have certain things, and that is you can't put parameters on what we're going to talk about. If you tell me we can't talk about certain things, I'm not going to do the interview with you because we can't go there. Because once you make that Faustian bargain, you're done. Mm-hmm. You know,
Yeah.
if I promise you we're not going to talk about something, then what happens to the next person that comes along? So you can't do that. I have to ask. You don't have to answer. I'm going to ask you respectfully. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to attack you. I don't mean to sound cryptic in this, but I have a piece that's scheduled to air in Real Sports in October. And I can't say who it's about. And please, I'm not being an asshole by not telling you who it is. But it was one of the most intense interviews I've ever done in my career. And we had to go some places that were really difficult. And it has to deal with sexual assault. And I did 9 hours of interviews with sexual assault or rape victims. And it was really, oh my God, intense, feeling somebody's pain. Again, as an I'm an objective journalist, but I'm also a human being. So, you feel some of these things and you've got to ask these questions because you know that this is what people want to ask. And again, it's the way that you ask it. Do you ask it in a snarky, accusatory way? I guarantee you ask somebody something in an accusatory tone, all you do is put them on the defensive. You have no shot of them giving anything that is remotely going to be revealing. That's my opinion. That's my experience.
So just for myself, could you phrase the same question two different ways, accusatory and then in another manner that you would use? Is there anything you could come up with I'd like to know just as a person that wants to.
It's also the tone, all right?
Yeah.
It's also the tone.
So how would you ask something to be, say you were very accusatory, what would the question sound like?
Well, do you want me to ask you or do you want me to just talk? All right. Well, tell me something about you that you might be defensive about.
Oh man. That's a good, let's say I'm defensive.
What might you be defensive about?
If anyone says anything bad about my kids.
Well, yeah, but I don't know that anybody would come out and say anything.
Okay. I'll be defensive about, man, I like it. I like that. I don't know. What are people defensive about? I don't get offended.
Okay.
Ever.
What is there something, did you ever, I'm trying to think offhand. Did you have a game where you blew a call, you blew something and people were really, they were really getting on you about it?
I mean, yeah, sure. A lot of times, but I would say if I pulled my groin my fourth year, and I played in the game and I could not run. I think maybe I was defensive about that afterwards when they would ask me about how I played. I think maybe. Right.
Okay. I'm doing this off the top of my head. Let's say that. Let's say you sign a new big deal. Okay, you sign a new big contract.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and season starts, and you're just, the effort just doesn't look like it's there. So, in a post-game locker room, a post-game locker room is tough because you know how it is. I mean, nerves are really frayed at that. Say we're sitting down the next week, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I sit down with you, and I would be like, so what's going on with your what's going on with your play, and do you think that big contract that you signed has something to do with the lackluster play? That would probably be it. Do you think that big contract that you signed has something to do with what seems to be lackluster play on your part?
See, that already pisses me off, that question.
Right. Why? Because I've made a judgment about you.
Yeah.
Okay? So
then can you ask that another way, a more professional way?
Well, number one, I would start it off by just saying, how would you assess your play so far this season? Okay? So I'm going to let you, right? And then I'm going to maybe follow up there. And then I'm going to say, you also signed a big contract. How might that have affected you?
Okay.
Or you signed a big contract in the off season. What do you think that the outside world might think about how that's affecting your play? Come on, you're a smart guy. You're a smart guy. How do you think? And I know you don't care about what they think, but this is the reality. That you just set it up as plainly as possible. But in my opinion, especially with athletes, and especially when an athlete has, done something that's very, that's questionable. The minute you start accusing them, I just think all they do is get defensive. And hey, look, this is the world we live in. You want that soundbite. Oh man, did you hear what I got AJ Hawk to say? He just started ripping it. Yeah. I don't know. To me, maybe that gets headlines. Maybe that makes something in Twitter. But I think that's not what being a journalist, in my opinion, is about.
You're right. I like that. I mean, the tone. It's all in the tone.
Tone is huge.
It really is, because I've had certain people in the media that it just seemed like no matter what happened, it was all doom and gloom for them. And there are a lot of times there are like a couple of different beat writers. They'd be like, an example, my one buddy, Jonathan Butnick, who I talk about on here a lot, we would talk about this. They'd be like, we'd win a game 42-7, let's say. And they'd come up to you like this real like sad face and like, oh, here we go. And you'd say, how do you get over that third down that you missed the tackle and gave it? Like, how do you get over it? And I was like, right. I don't know, bud. We won by 40 points. What do you think I should do? I'm going to go work. Right. I'm going to try to not miss that tackle, big guy. Pat him on the shoulder and try to get him out of there.
Well, I've always had this is a non-scientific assessment of one of the differences between male and female interviewers. And I've used the locker room as a laboratory for this. Okay. So game ends, male writer or reporter comes in. Hey, AJ, on that third down play where the back went into the flat and Bridgewater didn't see him and this and that, but you actually dropped into coverage and you missed that tackle. Yeah, that was a really tough play. Okay, well, number one, you've just told me the play, and you didn't ask me a question.
Yeah.
Female reporter comes in. AJ, what happened on that third down play?
So direct.
Right. It's direct, and it lets you speak. And here's what I've said. I ask you that question, all right? Now, do you, as the athlete, process it as, well, she didn't play in the game. She doesn't play, so I really need to break it down and let her know what happened. Or do you go the really like sexist way? Well, she doesn't even know what she's talking about, so I don't care what your motivation is. This is where you got to take the ego out. All I care about, my job is to elicit your best response. So I don't go into a locker room telling somebody what just happened. I go into a locker room trying to find out what just happened. And I guess I've always found, like with guys, because, I'm a guy, I know football. They got to go in and they got to tell everybody everything. Well, I'm a woman. I think I know football too, but I'm more interested in you breaking it down and giving me the analysis than me doing it. Like I said, it's unscientific, but believe me, in my career and a number of years I've been in locker rooms, I've witnessed this a lot. Guy comes in, he's going back and forth, like, says all this stuff, shoves the microphone or the tape recorder in your face. And it's like, dude, what do you want me to, like you said, what do you want me to say here? Come on.
That's such a good teaching tip. I see why you teach the class now. It's so beautiful. But you just illustrated what happens daily in the locker room. But
can you relate to that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And when you say what happened, the chances are as a player, you would know in your head, like instantly, like, oh, I know the play, man. And you say, I wish I could have that one back. That thing drives me crazy. I had it. I thought the guy made a good move. Adrian, he juked me or he just ran me over. I got beat. Right. It was a tough play. Right. I got to figure out a way to make that tackle next time.
Right. Exactly. It just, you let the person actually speak as opposed to passing judgment or making some assessment of their play. But listen, I have my own particular interviewing style. Me personally, I don't like leading questions. I don't like to put words in people's mouths. I like to let the person speak. This is the way that I grew up learning about interviewing, and it's the way that I like to approach things. And not everybody's like that. Mm-hmm. And I just know what served me well. And it's like, listen, I tell my students, I don't profess to know everything. I know what's worked for me. And I'm happy to share with you all the knowledge that I have, and you take something from it and you incorporate it, and it may not mean anything to you now, but I've told them, I guarantee you that everything we talk about in this class, if you go into journalism in some capacity, sooner or later you're going to come across a situation like this. And I hope that what we talked about or the examples that we illustrated resonate for you at that time.
That's great. I'm going to wrap this up in a minute, but it made me think of a recent Steve Smith clip that I'm not sure if you saw or not. He was in the locker room postgame, and a guy was asking him what sounded like a very leading question, getting to something negative, it felt like. And Steve just looked at him, but kept looking at it, which I love watching him interact with the media. And he kept looking at him. He's like, "What are you getting at, man? What are you trying to get at? What are you trying to dig at? What are you doing?" And the guy kept talking. He's like, "Get out of here, man. I'm done. I'm not talking to you." Like, do you respect that when a player does that, when they're that open and honest, or would you rather a guy just sit there and hold his anger in and give some garbage cliche answer?
Oh, God, are you kidding me? You never want garbage cliche. No, never. One time I was at a team, and there's a lot of turmoil going on in the locker room. And again, this is back in the day at ESPN when you could actually go in and do these stories. You could actually talk to a bunch of people. You can't do that today for a variety of reasons that, we don't need to get into. But so I go in there and I'm interviewing a bunch of people. And I've also done my reporting. I've talked to people off camera. I've talked to people and I have a pretty decent sense of what's going on. So I do an interview with this one guy, and we're done the interview, and, I pour out for my hand and I thank him. Cameras are off, and he looks at me and he goes, "Everything I just told you is bullshit." So without skipping a beat, I go, "Well, then I'm not using it." He goes, "What do you mean you're not using it?" I go, "I'm not going to use it. Are you kidding me? I mean, if you tell me it's not true, I'm not going to use it." I said, I'm not your mouthpiece. I mean, I'm not propaganda. No. I mean, I'm trying to, I'm not looking to, to accuse anybody or anything, but I'm looking to try to find out what's going on. And if you're telling me you're full of shit, there's no way that I'm putting this on the air. So we talk about it a little bit more. And then you get into kind of like the negotiation stage. Okay, what do you want to talk about? What are you willing to say? What are you really willing to because me personally, the anonymity always drives me crazy. A source told me, you know what? If you really believe something, then you should attach your name to it. I mean, I know you can't always have that. So as it turns out, with that player, we ended up turning the camera back on. And he didn't give me everything, but he refuted a lot of what he said, and he was honest. And I think it's partly because I just called him on it. I wasn't going to be in a position where I would rather not use the interview than put something out there that I know is blatantly false. So to answer your question, you always want somebody to speak their mind. Mm-hmm. And, one of the, I'll leave you with this, which you hopefully makes some sense to you. One of the, and I don't mean a technique in the sense that it's disingenuous, but I'm sure you've seen it where you're being interviewed by someone potentially, and somebody goes, "Really?" They respond, kind of incredulously, mm-hmm. and maybe they repeat the words back to you. So you really believe that you're not worth that contract? Now, all of a sudden, it sounds different when they hear it back than when they initially said it.
Yeah.
And then they go, "Well, I don't know, maybe that was a wrong choice of words. Not that I didn't deserve it, but..." So you always have to be careful with something like that, which is your initial reaction. So if you say something to me and I react in such a way that makes you think, "Should I not have said that?" Then all of a sudden you gotta be careful the position you put yourself in. Bottom line, AJ, it's all about listening. Yeah. Gotta listen so super carefully to what people say.
Man, and it's so tough to truly listen and not try to interject your own opinions or feelings.
Yeah, I mean, some people do, and look, in a situation like this where we're really having a conversation, I don't feel like you're interviewing me. You can do that.
Yeah.
And it's great. Again, it's another positive of doing a podcast. But to me, in a journalistic interviewing situation, me as the interviewer, I shouldn't be able, I shouldn't interject my opinion. Now, if somebody else feels that way, well, now, wait a minute. So-and-so said, going against that type of thing. I think you have to be really careful with situations like that. is it about you, the interviewer, or is it about the subject? And for me, it's always been about the subject. It's always been about trying to put that person in the best position to be as open and reflective as possible. And but to go and look, and I've been in some very adversarial interviewing situations. And if you watch Real Sports next month, you'll see one.
Can't wait.
A little dicey.
Oh, geez. With the sexual assault or abuse victims?
It involves that. It involves that.
Was this in the state of Pennsylvania?
Don't ask. No, I'm not going. And listen, I'm not being a jerk about it, but the piece is done and I shouldn't, I'm just not in a position. It was just very intense, stories like that. The stories that mean the most to me, and I've been very, I don't want to say lucky, but I feel really, I feel very strongly that I've been able to do them, is stories that I think are really going to make an impact on people. Whether it's in the NFL, and I've done Toradol abuse, marijuana use in the NFL, domestic violence issues, whatever it is, where you're uncovering things and it's making people think about it, talk about it, whatever it is. I think that those stories are really, really important to do. And I take them very seriously. I do.
Well, that is the ultimate teaser for Real Sports coming out in October, so I'm excited. I watch them all anyway, so that will be something I think all of our listeners will be checking out. So, Andrea, thank you for your time. So generous. Where can people? Where would you like them to find you if they want to see your work?
Oh, all right. So, HBO Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel.
It's great. You're great on there. It is a great show.
Thank you. Been a correspondent for 9 years. NFL Network just did a pretty intense story last week on 9/11, the Giants and 9/11. That was really good. So NFL Network. And I do a show for CBS Sports Network called We Need to Talk, which is the only all-female sports show on television. And you should have your mom watch that. So actually I hope co-hosted last week. I'll co-host next week. It debuts Tuesday, I think at 8:00 Eastern time on CBS Sports Network, and then it re-airs a bunch of times. So I feel like look, like I said, AJ, I have been in this business a long time. And above all, I am so grateful that I have challenges and I've got great jobs that I get to work on and great people that I get to work with. And then the teaching that I get to do in the spring at Boston University. They awarded me a fellowship. So I am a fellow. Very proud of that. I'm the Andrew R. Lack Fellow at Boston University. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky and I'm really grateful. And I want to have one last word on something. I'm really proud of you. Okay. I don't know where your career is going to go. You're really young, but you've done this podcast. I've seen a lot of the people that you have whether it's an Aaron Rodgers or, guys that you used to play with that you are bringing on here. I'm really proud of you because you're trying really hard. You're working really hard at it. And I think it's great. And only by getting the experience, you're going to get better. And to do as many as you've done, I'm really proud of you. So,
wow. Well, I appreciate that.
We don't know each other. We've worked very occasionally and passed in the locker rooms and on the field, but I just think what you're doing is really great and keep up the terrific work.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much. And I promise you, my mom will be watching the show because she will watch this. She will watch this podcast. She will listen and she will send me a text right afterwards saying, "Oh, Andrea Kremer, I love her even more than I used to."
So I can say, "Hi, Mom."
Say, "Hi, Judy." You can say, "Hello, Judy Hawk." Yes, she loves you.
Hello, Judy Hawk.
Oh, God. Now her ego is going to be so big with her friends.
That's all right.
All right, Andrea. Thank you very much. And we will check all of your work out in the future and hopefully we'll get you back on here someday.
All right, AJ, thanks so much. Take good care. I really appreciate it. I'm very honored that you had me on. Take care.
Thank you.
We're glad you could join us for today's conversation. After you subscribe to the show, head over to thehawkcast.com or reach out to AJ directly on Twitter at @officialAJHawk to recommend future guests that will help us inspire people to keep talking. Thanks again, and we look forward to speaking with you next time on the HawkCast.